Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today I'm going to walk you through fat loss in its simplest terms. So after this video, you're going to have a very good understanding of how fat loss occurs and the components you need to be taken into consideration to get the best results. We're going to keep this very simple, very straightforward. If you do enjoy the video, please do drop a like. If you have any questions throughout, throw them down below. I'll get back to you. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you can keep up to date with future videos to help you and your goal. Okay, so fat loss, what is it? Fat loss is dropping body fat while retaining muscle mass. That's the big difference between fat loss and weight loss, okay? We want to make sure we're retaining muscle mass during this process of dropping body fat. How does fat loss occur? Fat loss occurs through creating a calorie deficit. A calorie deficit is taking in less food, or calories should I say, than you are expending. Now, if you're not in a deficit, you will not drop body fat. So we need to be making sure we're burning more calories than we are taking in. So taking in calories is obviously food and drink. But where and how do we burn calories? Well, there's four main places that we burn calories. You have your resting metabolic rate, which is simply the amount of calories that you burn at rest. So me sat here right now, not really doing a lot, I'm burning calories. And that's going to equate to 60 to 80% of your total daily calorie expenditure. So that takes up a lot of it, okay? Now, that's just you sitting there doing nothing, so there isn't really a lot you can do to impact that in the short term. In the long term, there is. In the long term, it is thought that the more muscle mass you have, the higher that resting metabolic rate is going to be. But that's long term, potentially shows the positives of adding muscle mass. Again, it might only be short amounts, but it's maybe one of the benefits of many of actually adding muscle mass throughout your goal. But right now, short term, not a lot you can do about that, but it's important to understand that that takes up 60 to 80% of your total daily expenditure. After that, we have NEAT, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically a complicated way of saying the calories you burn through your daily activity away from training, planned exercise. Now, depending on the individual, so obviously depending on how much activity you do day to day, this is thought to equate to anywhere between like 10 to 50% of your daily expenditure. So this might be if you're standing more than sitting in a day. This might be if you park further away and you have to walk more, so the total amount of steps that you get in a day. So if you're taking the steps rather than the elevator. Can even be minute details in like if someone's fidgeting more than someone else, they can be burning an extra few calories. All these sort of things contribute to your overall NEAT and like roughly 10 to 50% of your daily expenditure. Then we have obviously exercise. Okay, so that's planned exercise. So maybe your aerobic sessions or your weight training sessions or whatever it might be. Now again, depending on how much someone does from nothing up to maybe a decent amount. This is thought to equate to anywhere from not, obviously if someone's doing nothing, to 30%. So you might be surprised at how many or how little calories you're actually expending when it comes to planned exercise. In comparison to our daily expenditure, where we're seeing up to 50%, exercise is only maybe up to 30%. That's important to notice. And then lastly, we have our thermic effect of meals. Okay, so basically when you eat food, you also burn calories when you're basically digesting that. Now it's only going to equate to a small amount, maybe like 8 to 15%, but it's worth understanding that that also occurs. So they're your four main areas of where you're going to burn calories. Understanding that the two main areas is your resting metabolic rate and your daily expenditure, your non-exercise thermogenesis. Okay, so the activity you're doing away from training. So when it comes to creating a deficit and we're looking at expenditure out versus calories in, we know that we can create a huge chunk of that through managing our intake, right? If we manage our intake, restrict our intake, depending on how many calories we have to play with, we can help push towards a deficit by taking quite a lot of calories away from our food intake. And we also now know that from our expenditure point of view, where's the two biggest areas that we can increase our expenditure to help push us towards a deficit. Well, one's resting metabolic rate, which is nothing we can really do about short term, but two is our daily expenditure, so the activity we're doing outside of training. If we now then look at managing and controlling food and this NEAT, all of a sudden we're putting ourselves in a very, very good position to create a deficit, a good size deficit as well, to get a good rate of progress and be consistent with it. Now, don't get me wrong, exercise is obviously still important. I'm not trying to push exercise to the side. However, I think exercise is more important away from the calorie expenditure side of things. It can contribute to the calories expended, yes, which can help put you in a deficit, yes, and that's worth understanding and knowing, but I think its real benefits are away from that. Okay, and now there's numerous ones, and that's going to be numerous health benefits. If we're looking at weight training, that's going to be retaining muscle mass, which if we're looking at fat loss, is important. So I think when it comes to training, we have to be more specific about what we might be getting out of it away from calories expended. Think of training slightly differently. In that fashion, very simply, I would try and prioritize weight training as your main training form, just because, again, weight training is going to be very good for retaining muscle mass. And if we're trying to drop body fat but retain muscle mass because our goal is fat loss, then that's something we should be focusing on. That is fat loss, and that is creating a deficit in its simplest forms in a nutshell. If I was to add anything else of initial massive importance for fat loss, the only thing would be your sleep. I'm not going to get into this massively because I have done a whole video on sleep not long ago. All I will say is this: there has been research to show the importance of sleep, not only for your health, but for your fat loss too. You need to take sleep very, very importantly if you're looking to get the best out of your results. And like I said, I do have a video that I did recently on how to improve your sleep, so do go and check that out. And I also walk through some of those reasons as to why it's so important for your goal. Hopefully you did find this video helpful. If you did, please do drop a like. If you didn't have any questions throughout, hopefully you've thrown them down. I'll get back to you. And if you haven't already, please do go ahead and subscribe because it helps me out a ton. I'll catch you on the next one.